Hello and welcome back. We're so excited to see you this week. If you haven't been with us before, my name is Candace Sojgren, and I'm here with Kris Girrell, my author, co-author, my co-conspirator in life and all things, and just one of my best friends. And you're here today with us at Dream, Declare, Deliver. And so we are supporting you and others in living your life by design. What does that mean? Living life by design. It sounds kind of fancy. It sounds kind of fluffy, like flowery. When I was in my 20s, I had a boss who spoke in flowery language, and I never really gave him much credence. So Kris and I have really been talking a lot. We've written a book called Typhoon Honey, The Only Way Out is Through, really on this topic of how do you live the life that you've always wanted, free from distractions, really. And so what we're really focused on in that book and in this conversation is how to give you actionable ways to create the life that you want. And so for the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about how to dream and giving you some exercises for how to dream and ways to dream. We've also been talking about ways of declaring. How do you prepare yourself to declare? And then how do you get ready because you're going to get what you asked for? And one of the themes that came up in both of those weeks was considerations. And as Kris and I have talked about considerations, these are all of the reasons you can't. So it's either things other people tell you, oh, that's nice that you want that new job, but it's never going to happen. Or that's nice that you want to have that love of your life, but you're 15 pounds overweight. Whatever that is, those are considerations that someone else is telling you, that you're telling yourself, that are holding you back. So today I'm really excited about our topic today because we're going to start on deliver. And this is where you're going to start to see your ROI. And with deliver, Kris and I were just talking about okay, there's so many places we could go because deliver really means committed action. And without committed action, a vision's just a nice idea. Without committed action, a dream is just something that you talk about. And so today we're going to start talking about doing it, living it, creating it, and being it. And the first thing that we think is important is letting go of all of those considerations. So Kris, what does that mean, letting go of the considerations?
Well, I think of it this way. There's I'm carrying around a body bag behind me full of rocks.
Morbid.
Yeah, I know, but it's full of rocks and it's full of all this stuff from my past. And it's just I got it over my shoulder and I'm dragging it forward. And it kind of is the ballast that holds me from running at full speed, from achieving my dreams. As long as I'm dragging this, this bag around behind me and this huge duffel sack full of boulders, I'm really never going to get very far. So the first thing we have to do is unzip the bag and look at the rocks and say, what are those things that are holding me back? What are those? They're a lot of times they're negative self-thoughts. A lot of times they're interpretations that we made, based on past events, things that happened to us that actually happened, but we took an interpretation of that, and then that's stuck in there and says, oh, you can't do that because you're just a little pipsqueak, or you can't do that because, and so on. So what those things are beliefs and thoughts and interpretations of experiences from our past. So what letting go is all about is first identifying what those things are, and then finding a mechanism to actually jettison them, to let go of them, to get them out of our consciousness so that we can run down the road free and not dragging that bag.
It's so funny. You had such a PC way of describing it as the bag of boulders. I talk about it as a backpack full of poop. And you first need to admit, I've got a backpack full of really stinky poop, and you got to open up that backpack and decide what you're going to do with it. So, so thank you for
the mom of a little one.
Right. I know. And it was a different word before I had a 3-year-old.
Yeah, right.
but yeah. And so why is it important to let go? I think that a lot of times people who aren't in this work all the time, like you and I are, they might think that's just silly, I'm not actually holding on to things. But what's the value? Why would you go through the practice of letting go?
For me, it's freeing. For me, it's there's so much of my head energy, my psychic energy is wrapped up in all of those thoughts and beliefs. And so, in order to have the energy to take action and actually deliver on what we've said my dream is, I have to have the energy to be able to do that. And as long as that energy is tied up and not free, I just, I'm only going to give it half the amount that I can actually give it.
So I think you bring up a good point. And I like to paint pictures with examples. And so the example that comes up for me is dating. And so like, I have so many friends who are in kind of blah, meh relationships, not me. I'm madly in love, but many of my friends are in meh relationships, and they keep talking about, I really want to have a partner that XYZ. I really want to have a relationship that blows me away. I really want to have someone who listens, but yet they keep going home to the partner who doesn't listen. They keep going home or going back to the partner that's not actually serving their needs. And I think of this practice of letting go as kind of like finally breaking up with the dirtbag boyfriend, or finally, finally saying, all right, this is actually pulling energy away from me such that I can't actually go after the things that I want to go after.
I like the way you say that, because it's not about changing the boyfriend or the girlfriend. What it is recognizing that I keep coming back to this place that's not serving me. I keep calling that my home, instead of recognizing that I need to be doing something other than what I'm doing now. And so it is, it's my summoning the power within me to say, no, this doesn't serve me anymore. Not this relationship, not this concept, not this, this self-belief or whatever. It's recognizing that it's not serving me.
And the practice of this is something that Kris and I call clearing. And so Kris, what is clearing?
Well, clearing is a way to bring honesty and openness to what's actually going on. When you're clearing with another person, it's saying, here's what is going on inside of me, and owning my story or owning my interpretation of what's going on, such that I free the other person and myself from that entanglement. Kind of that's the easiest way I can come up with it. I'm sure you can say it much better.
I mean, I think that we do this a lot in life, right? So we do spring cleaning of our houses or of our closets. I had a friend, Janice, who had made a business out of closet audits. And what closet audits were, she would go into your closet, she would pull everything out of your closet, and then she'd hang the things back up that you actually wear. And then for the things you don't wear, she'd either find a company thing, an accompanying thing to what you do wear, or she'd donate it. She'd be like, okay, I'm going to take this stock, I'm going to donate it. Now look at how much space you have. Now what are you going to do with that? And so I think of clearing our lives as a closet audit and getting clear on, okay, what's serving us, what's not serving us. And so I think there's a couple of steps here that are helpful. And I'd invite you, if you're listening today, to just jot it down, take a piece of paper and a pen and think about, okay, in the last week of my life, what are things that I'm holding on to that have been holding me back? And it could be anything. So Kris, give me some examples. What are things that you've been holding on to in the past week in your life that are holding you back?
I just don't have enough money to do that.
That was a moment too.
Yeah, or I've been thinking of a trip to South America, and and the two countries that I'm looking at are both riddled with pretty severe violence right now. It's like, oh, that's not safe for me to go to. I need to play it safe. I'm not the young guy that I used to be, or there are all kinds of things like that. The big one for me is I'm retired. That has all kinds of meanings, and some of them are freeing and some of them are really trapping me and slowing me down. So they can be anything. Sometimes when you sit down, imagine somebody standing in front of you and you say, here's what my dream is. And, your friend their job is to say all the reasons why you can't have that. and you'll hear, I mean, they'll make up stuff, right? But you'll hear inside that, bing, that one zinged you. Ouch, that one stung, oh, that one doesn't matter. But, like you'll hear which ones are yours because they'll hurt.
Yeah.
So that's one way to identify them.
So just in the past week, what's been coming up for me is I'm planning a trip to Australia with my sister. She survived breast cancer, and like, this is a big deal for her. She wants to take this trip to Australia, something we've been talking about for 20 years. And I first told my lovely husband, and he was like, nope, like, I don't want to go on that trip. And like, you've got a 3-year-old at home, and like all the reasons why. And we've talked about this on a previous show. And then I was like, okay, how am I going to talk about this with my boss? I just started my new job. I've only been here for a few months. And then I went to my boss, and he's like, oh, wait, we have clients in Australia. Like go, and you can have some meetings, and we'll pay for it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Right. But so that piece, the money piece had come out, but then in the last week it was, well, I have all these other commitments. I have commitments that I know about, and I have commitments I don't know about. There are things that could be happening in my life that are like holding me back from taking any steps towards this thing that's really important to my sister. So that's something that I get to clear. Now the next thing I'd ask you is, once you jotted down a couple things that are holding you back, how do you feel? Like when you look at those things, like I have these obligations, I'm retired. How does that feel? And like, what are the beliefs that you have about yourself as a result of that? So you want to get first clear on like, what are the things we need to clear out? And I also invite you to think about other people. I just mentioned Andrew. I'm definitely not going to clear out my husband, but like that conversation with him probably does need to be cleaned up, because it wasn't supportive of my vision. And he probably had his own stuff that he needs to clear out about that.
Right. Right. Yeah. It wasn't supportive of him, and,
Right.
and so when we have things to clean up or clear up with other people, it's real important to actually make some time for it, to ask them for permission to sit down and clear something out. The funniest thing is, in preparing for this past Tuesday, only 3 days ago, from 2 different walks of my past, 2 different guys called me up and said, I really need to clear something with you. Do you have time right now? And I said, sure, what's up? One of them was from 20 some odd years ago. Wow. I was facilitating a group dynamics thing, a trust fall. And, the person instructing the trust fall, you tell somebody, they're standing up on a pedestal, and you say, grab a hold of your shirt and don't let go, and then fall back. I failed to tell one person that, or he didn't hear it. And when he fell back, he went this way, and his watch hit this guy on the cheek and cut him, and he had to get stitches for it. And he had forgotten all about it. And then one day he was, just this past week, he was telling someone, I know, he was telling someone about it. It's like, I still hold a grudge about that. So I need to call up Kris and clean that up. So, and he's a good friend. He's a person that I hold near and dear. And I said, wow, what an honor that is, that you thought to call me up and say, I've been holding this resentment way back in the deep recesses of my brain, but it showed up. And I don't want that between us. So here's the story I made up, and he actually did a really good clearing. One of the things that we do when we're clearing is we say, here's my part. This is what I'm holding on to. And what we're usually holding, let's go through the actual. So we're going to give you a formula right now. Right. And I love formulas. And we'll talk about formulas a lot on this podcast. But we'll actually have a formula for having a clearing conversation. So Kris mentioned step number 1, which is make an appointment. Yeah. Do not just unload on someone because you woke up on the wrong side of the bed today and you're in a horrible mood. I have done that. It does not go well. I promise. And also saying, I'd like to clear something with you. I'd like to clear the air with you. There's something that's been, between us, letting them know that you've got something to clear, because it allows them to prepare, and it allows you to prepare for that conversation. So that's step number 1. Yeah. And the way, notice that my friend didn't say, you did something to me. He said, I've been holding on to something that I never talked to you about. And it's what I made up about it that, is kind of bugging me. And so, it's real important to make the clearing not about the other person,
And I'm going to give an example of this. So my biological father, he and I have been working on clearing for years. Still working on it.
Mhm.
But I one day said, "Hey, I'd like to have a conversation." I made an appointment, and we had a conversation. And then I basically said, this is when I was 35 years old, and I said, I got on the phone call and I said, "I forgive you." And he was like, "Okay." And I didn't tell him for what. Didn't tell him the facts. I didn't give, and it was just more of a me being,
Righteous.
righteous. And so like, "I forgive you." So what was his response? "I forgive you too." Because he didn't know what I was talking about. Like I came out of
Mhm.
left field, and I got off the phone call at crying. And so there's a bunch of things I did wrong in this, by the way, which we'll dissect. But my husband said, "Let's go back to the very beginning. Did you call him to forgive him, or did you call to hear him say he was sorry?" And so the purpose of clearing is not to get the other person. I'm going to show you. It's not to get them to say I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Recognize this is in my backpack and I'm
Yep.
wanting to drop it out.
Yep.
So step number one is make an appointment. Step number two is share the facts, not your version of the facts, not like, it was a beautiful day on the island of Sodor. I'm a big Thomas the Train fan right now. My every book is It's a Beautiful Day on the Island of Sodor. But rather than pontificating, just share these things happened. Like Kris, you were just talking about, right?
Yeah. Long
And
ago and far away, you were running a trust fall. The guy, like, here's what happened. He didn't hear you or you didn't say it, but he went blah and I got hit.
exactly. And
Right.
then so you share the facts. That's step number two.
Mhm.
The facts, please, just the facts. Then you share your interpretation. So when this happened, that's when you get to share whatever
Right.
your
Yeah.
interpretation is.
And the
And
way he said it was the story I made up was, and then he told me what, like I didn't care enough about him or I wasn't paying attention, like he made that up. That was his interpretation, but that's what, kind of, had him by the throat. And what was causing him to hold on to this resentment.
so I think you just said something really important there, Kris, which is my interpretation of these facts is not, you didn't care about me. Like
Mhm.
I can't say, okay, so I opened my arms and cut a guy's face. You didn't care about me.
Mhm.
No, it's I opened my arms and hit a guy's face and hurt him. And then I made up something like,
Mhm.
I decided that like I wasn't worth caring about.
Mhm.
So really owning your
Yeah.
part in that.
And as a recipient of that clearing, um I was free then to say, holy smokes, I had forgotten all about that. I do remember that. And I just, my eye wasn't on the ball, like I thought I had explained it to everybody so many times. This guy was like 10th in line. And so I thought it was handled. And, I got to own my part of that because he totally owned his,
Yeah.
and that's what's beautiful about a clearing.
Yeah. And so in this formula, you make an appointment, you share the facts, then you share your interpretation of the facts. The next step is, what's your responsibility in it? Like for
Mhm.
this guy, 20 years later, he's still holding on to it. So there, he has responsibility in that. He's been holding
Mhm.
a grudge against you for 20 years. And
Mhm.
that has to have had, if he wrote that one down on the sheet of paper and talked about how he felt, that has to feel like heavy,
Yeah.
like, wow, I've been carrying this boulder around in my bag for 20 years.
And they didn't even realize it. It was like totally forgotten until something cued that memory and it came back. So, a lot of times we might not be aware of the things that are in that bag, of rocks or, bag of poop or whatever it is. We might not even know it's there until we start the exercise of trying to clean it out.
And then with that, once you've identified it, and like once you're like, wow, I'm holding a grudge right now. The next step is to take responsibility and say, okay, here's what I'm going to do to shift this going
Mhm.
forward. And this is honestly why this is the deliver portion of our show is that, you know, like you could just go around telling people you forgive them all day long, and that's not actually going to solve anything because it's not you taking any action towards your own vision. And so this is a really important step, letting the other person know what you will do to shift this story moving forward. And then you can make an ask of them.
And that's the last step in the clearing is, you know, he didn't ask me, but I said, is there any requests you have of me? Is there anything I get to do or I need to do? And he said, no, I needed to just let go of it and I'm clear now. And man, that feels like a relief, you know, but sometimes there's a request and you can then honor that request, or, you know, if it's absurd or whatever, it usually isn't, you know, we can move on, you know, the space is cleared and we're back to, you know, being clean between us. Now, the real hard person to clear with is guess who?
I don't know. The person I'm hardest on?
Yeah, right. The hardest person to clear with is ourselves, you know, because we have evidence that this belief is right. Because it's not something that's between me and another person. It's like, it's something in my life that happened and I made an interpretation of that. And so I'm often attached to, or, you know, pretty clear that's who I am, you know, with that story. And so it's a little harder to extract ourselves from it the way we do with another person and you know, in doing the clearing. So how do you start off the clearing with yourself?
Well, you start, like the one thing I always do is I try to start off just like your friend did, identifying, oh, this thing happened to me and I made up an interpretation. I've been holding on to that interpretation for 20 years. I do actually look at what were the events. So you know, I had a belief for a very long time that people can't be trusted. So I have to do everything myself.
Right.
And I carried that with me everywhere. That was definitely holding me back. So the first thing was like, okay, how did I come to be this way? And the one thing I did is I journaled about it. I spent a lot of time being like, okay, where did this come from?
Yeah.
And I identified the moment in time that it came from. And I went back and I said, okay, like what interpretation did I make up about myself? Why is that not serving me anymore? And what is my new commitment to myself, knowing that? So what about you?
So it's the same sort of thing, you know, like we said before, it's like, what's the facts? What actually happened without interpretation, without story, without embellishment? Just, you know, this is what happened. You know, when I was 4 years old, I did da 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 da, and that's what happened. As if you were like some outside reporter watching it and reporting on the evening news. The second thing that I inject into clearing with myself is I get to ask myself, what's the benefit that I get out of holding on to this? Because it's there and it's perpetuated for a reason. A lot of times, you know, some of us will have these self-deprecating statements about ourselves. Oh, I'm really dumb at math. I don't know how to do that. At which point everybody around us says, oh no, you're really good. You're really smart. You know, like, I think you're the greatest. And, you know, in a reverse kind of way, we get praise by, you know, beating ourselves up. So some of these things get reinforced in there because we get something out of it. Sometimes what we get out of it is it just keeps us playing safe, you know. And Dream, Declare, Deliver is all about stepping out over the abyss and taking a risk. So, you know, those things that would keep us safe are often the limiting beliefs, the rocks in the bag, you know, that we're carrying around too.
And I think one of the things, and this is going to be the homework that we give for tonight or today for those of you who are listening, is you get to replace it. You get to replace that belief with something else. So just like when you were clearing with someone else and you said, okay, here's what happened. Here's the interpretation I made up about it. Here's my responsibility. What you can count on for me to shift this is, and my request of you is, you could do the same thing with yourself. So the homework that we're going to offer to you today is to write down 3 limiting beliefs. 3 things that you continuously tell yourself. You're too old, you're too young, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too whatever. You don't have enough money, whatever it is, write them down, get really clear on them. And then go through the clearing conversation with yourself. So these are the facts. Think about the facts of where you first got them from. This is the interpretation I made up. my responsibility in this is. And the way I'm going to shift this is, and replace that with something different. So if it is, people can't be trusted, so I have to do everything myself, I will trust, period. Write it down. So that's an example. So pick 3 of these beliefs and go through a clearing conversation with yourself.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be the opposite of what you've said, but it has to be related to what the underlying net belief is. So if it's about my worth, or it's about my abilities, I could say I am highly capable. If my self-limiting belief is I can't do math because I'm dyslexic, and so I'm not good at money management or something like that, I can, replace that with I'm highly capable, I get a lot of stuff done, or, any positive statement that's related to that sort of can do, can't do kind of thing. So we want to pick something, that's either the opposite or is related to it in a positive variety.
Or a shift that you're committed to making.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll say one other trick, and this is a cognitive manipulation trick. One of the things you can do is write that self-limiting belief on a 3x5 card. And then with a big red magic marker, put an X from corner to corner on it, flip it over, and on the other side, write the positive thing. And what that does, anytime you have that thought, or, carry it around with you, you pull that card off, your mind sees a red X through it, just and then you flip it over and you read the other response, and very quickly that maps in that new thought. It's a trick. Your brain knows it's a trick. I know it's a trick. It's a trick, but it works. So it's actually a fun thing to do. And I think with that, there's so many more things that we can get into. We want to talk about shifting and things like that, and how to do shifts. But we'll pick that up on another session. For today, we just want to keep you in positive mentality going forward. Dream, declare, deliver. We got a lot more to talk about in terms of how to deliver to yourself and to the world what it is that you came here for. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Candace, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.